A heartbreaker for the New York Giants, a blowout for the New York Jets. The Mets barely holding on to a playoff spot. The Yankees take on the Red Sox. Just another day on the NY Sports Index. That is Jamie Eisner. I am Chris Schubert, talking all things New York sports. Jamie, the results maybe not the best for both of us this weekend, but I will say it is weekends like this one that make me love doing the show because there is so much on the buffet menu for us today on a Monday.
Ton of major New York sports news, and obviously it's only going to get bigger as we get into late September into October for all these purposes. And then obviously you're going to add hockey and basketball back into this mix here very soon. Let's start with the Giants because you could argue that was the game of the weekend. Obviously we're recording this and releasing this before Monday Night Football.
You mean you didn't think Falcons Vikings 1 touchdown in 4 quarters wasn't enthralling television?
No. And I have my thoughts on J.J. McCarthy remain the same as they were when he was coming out, although now he's going to miss some time. But this is not the Minneapolis Sports Index. This is the New York Sports Index. Very different places. See, I now am in the awkward position you were just in after week one, right?
Yep.
Where you kind of feel like you got a moral victory, but do you really want to have a moral victory?
You're a week behind me, so let me tell you how this goes. You're going to be where I am today.
Oh, well, I know how it goes. They play an 0-2 Kansas City Chiefs team in primetime that's desperate for a win. They're going to drop 50. Okay. This was a game that we went back and forth a couple weeks ago on this game specifically when we did Playoff Predictor about whether or not they could win this game. And I wasn't exactly feeling great after the week one offensive performance from this Giants team. Obviously, a completely different offensive output from this game from start to finish. And from the start, we'll get into it in a second, one of the weirdest drives I have ever seen. And I've watched a lot of football over the last, I would say, I've been watching football a long time, but I would say I've probably been watching football and being able to comprehend and understand it. You know what I mean? Like, cause you watch, Chris, you probably like that. You watch football with your dad, as a kid, I remember watching it, but like when you start to process it and follow it as a fan, it's a little bit different. I've probably been doing that for 24, 25 years now. And so I've seen a lot of football, both in person and on TV. And this was one of the weirdest drives I've ever experienced in my life, that first drive to start the game. But the Giants looked competent offensively, and the Giants did with Russell Wilson what we talked about in the preseason as what their potential max would be, which is, can you bring back the deep ball? He sure as hell brought back the deep ball in this game to Malik Neighbors, to Wan'Dale Robinson, who I can hold on. I'll get to overtime in a second. I'll get to overtime throw in a second. Just wait. Just you wait. I'm aware. But I mean, look, this game looked over for them at times in their favor and out of their favor. I mean, that late touchdown to Malik Neighbors when everybody knew they're just going to go deep and he still splits the defense and gets a touchdown was great. Wan'Dale Robinson, as I mentioned on the show multiple times, is still a huge part of what the Giants are trying to do on offense. So they looked really good there. They didn't really get the run game going like I had hoped. They had some moments. We'll talk about Cam Scatterbo and what his role is going to be going forward, but the passing game was on point. Russell Wilson looked very good, is keeping the Jackson Dart stuff at bay, a little bit of at least for another week or so. Brutal pick in overtime. Can't have that. Essentially, I mean, it was an arm punt, essentially. Like, it was a non-competitive interception. But you did so much in this game, and if Brandon Aubrey wasn't like a robot kicker, to kick a 64-yarder to send the game in overtime, you're celebrating a victory here. So there is good and there is bad. The bad is your defense got carved up again. I have some serious questions about the way you played that end of fourth quarter scenario defensively, completely leaving the middle of the field open for knowing they have a long-range kicker indoors. There's a lot of things that we could talk about, but overall, it was good to see them competitive on offense again because they were so anemic in that first game. As ASU fans, we're happy to see Scatterbo get going. And we saw that defensive front have a lot of success. There was literally a sack in this game where you had KT, Burns, and Carter all converge on the quarterback early in this game. So, and by the way, we'll talk about him also in a second. it looks like, and I'll give a shout out to my colleague over at the Draft Network, Mason Johnstone, who was beating this drum for a year. Marcus Bow looks like a player. Came in at left tackle early in that game for reasons we'll discuss in a second, and looked really good. And obviously they're both replacing Andrew Thomas right now, who didn't start in this game. So there were a lot of positives in this game. The problem is you're 0-2 now, and you're about to get your teeth kicked in on national television. So, like, that part isn't great.
I'll tell you, this is tough for me. And it's tough for me because I'm trying to not attribute what I am actively going through with the New York Jets to the Giants, because it would be very easy for me to see what I've seen over the last 2 weeks for the Jets and say, don't accept the moral victory, because it very quickly will come crashing down on you and it will completely erase. They're two different football teams. I have to evaluate the Jets for what the Jets are doing, and I have to evaluate the Giants for what the Giants are doing. And to me, the thing that would frustrate me the most coming out of this game is that interception by Russell Wilson, not just because it directly led to the result, but to me, it almost takes every bit of air out of the balloon. Like, it just completely erases any type of moral victory I could take from this game, because he has a career day. It's still not good enough, and he makes an absolutely brutal mistake. I mean, it's not even close. It's not even a 50-50 ball. I mean, he misses it by 5 yards, and he just immediately throws it to the Dallas secondary. And you talked about end-of-game scenarios defensively for the Giants. I thought the way that Schottenheimer coached overtime, he was playing for the tie. He gave the Giants the ball back, and I didn't think the Cowboys were going to see, and I don't think the Cowboys would have seen the ball again if not for the Russ pick, because I think the clock would have just ran out either way. Either the Giants would have won the game, or it was going to end in a tie. So I think the game was being handed to you on a silver platter, and it's sort of one of those catch-22s, Jamie, where that's the way the Giants offense was rolling, was taking those deep shots, so you kind of have to do it, but you always know that with Russ, at least at this stage, that is a big risk for him, is that he tends to throw those bad interceptions. And so it does two things for me. The Jackson Dart conversation, we're not worried about my scenario of Jackson Dart coming out of halftime for the Kansas City Chiefs game. I think we can avoid that, right? I think we've avoided that for a little bit. And I do think potentially the week 4 thing's out of play too. Like, I think Russ throwing for 450, there's going to be this runway where he's going to get a little bit more time.
50-50 on that thought.
Okay.
I agree completely. He's not coming out for a non-injury. Obviously, there was he had a couple plays in this game. They had a couple package plays for him where it was kind of an RPO, but he handed off both times. I believe both times to Scadaboo, if I remember correctly. The Giants, again, you have to play. The game isn't played on paper. You have to go out there and play. But if what is going to happen to the Giants is what everybody thinks is going to happen to the Giants, just because Kansas City is now not only a better team, but a desperate team, I can see them losing in such a fashion that there is a overwhelming outcry for Jackson Dart in week 4 against the Chargers.
Maybe.
So
yeah.
I wouldn't take that off the table. Now, in a normal scenario, yes, having a performance like Russ did in week 2 would normally garner you a couple more weeks, but I just think you're 0-2, about to be 0-3, might be an embarrassing, and again, as we've talked about this on the show, whatever happens on primetime in standalone games gets 1.5x value. And whether that's fair or unfair, it's how this works. J.J. McCarthy last week won NFC Offensive Rookie of the Week for one good quarter because it happened in primetime. And by the way, what did he do in 4 quarters in his follow-up performance?
Nothing. As somebody who had a lot of J.J. McCarthy-related bets, he did nothing last night.
Nothing. And by the way, but this happens for everybody. When you play in primetime, the takes and the pressure changes when all of the eyes are on you. And again, if this becomes what we think it is, which is the quote-unquote get-right game for the Kansas City Chiefs, I could see a scenario where that happens to Jackson Dart. But to your overall point, Chris, there is that sense of, I thought this game was going to be a tie, because especially when the Giants had the ball late. And I know this is different than it is in college for a myriad reasons of how you play overtime, the rules of overtime, and things of that nature. But typically, you feel pretty good when you open overtime on defense and then get the ball with no points scored.
Right.
Like, not even a field goal. You feel like, okay, You are setting yourself up, especially for the condensed overtime period of 10 minutes. You feel in that scenario that A, you only need a field goal, or B, you might be able to take off enough time that the other team won't be able to score if you can't. You just got to move the ball. And not that you're playing for a tie, but it's still better than a loss. So you feel in that scenario that your chances of not losing become pretty high. But then you quickly just give the ball back to the other team. And at that point, given what you know about Aubrey, and just kind of given the momentum at that point, you felt like that was the moment when the Giants got the ball back in overtime. That was the moment to step on their throats. That was the moment where you had some momentum again, despite the field goal that tied the game at the end of the second half. You had that momentum again to go down the field and give yourself a shot to win. And when it blew up that spectacularly, you kind of knew at that point, like, all right, the Giants aren't getting the ball back. And they didn't. And it's as well as they played in that game, it's disappointing that you're still 0-2, staring at 0-3. And again, nobody necessarily expect them to be a playoff team, but in this stretch to begin the season, as we talked about on our show on the Playoff Predictor, it's a brutal start to the season for the New York Giants. Not being able to sneak out one of these two games really hurts.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, despite all of the good on offense, how you can feel good with the way the game ended. And I know that's a little unfair to just put it all on the last maybe 3 or 4 minutes of the game, but it's the image that's burned into your head about this game of Russ played great and he still was the reason why we lost. So, like, there are going to be some people out there today that say, why wouldn't they go to Jackson Dart? Russ can play great. He's still the reason why we're losing games. And I think that's an overreaction, and I think that's unfair, but that's the lasting image for so many people coming out of that game.
And it's fair. I mean, they lose this game in regulation if Jackson Dart was a starter. Like, I don't think Jackson Dart could have done in the first 60 minutes of this game what Russ did.
I don't think they score more than 20 points in this game if Jackson Dart starts.
But yes, I do understand there is a little bit of the, Brett Favre in the NFC Championship game with the Vikings feeling of, like, you throw a mind-numbing interception that costs you the game late, it doesn't really matter how you got there. In many points of view. But, for some other takeaways away from the quarterback position in this game, it did look like, and it's, again, week 2, I got to be careful. These are still small sample sizes, but it did look to me like the Giants started to shift their focus in the backfield away from Tyrone Tracy and to Cam Scatterbo, who got a lot more work in this game, both in terms of snaps and in terms of overall rushing attempts. Was it just game flow? Was it a 1 week thing? Was it, we don't like Tyrone Tracy talking about how our offense looked the week before, which is something he did in the media, and maybe was that a little bit of a punishment? Or is it just a 1 game blip, knowing that these two guys are going to kind of go back and forth? There is no clear RB1. I would say this, as much as I do like Tyrone Tracy, and I do think he is worthy of being a starter, but given their struggles to run the ball in general, given the struggles that their offensive line has running the ball right now, I'd at least rather have the infectious energy that Cam Scatterbo gives whenever the ball is in his hands a little bit more often. And maybe it's not to this extreme, but I do think this at worst should be 50-50. I don't think it should look like it did in week 1, for example.
Can I take that a step further? Because you talk about the infectious energy, and I think we're going to say the same thing. I'm just going to use a different way of framing it. But I also think for a team whose offensive line is in a somewhat state of disarray, would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'd rather have the more physical, knock people over, stumble into 2 or 3 yards so that I can keep my offense somewhat on schedule, rather than having Tyrone Tracy back there to where I don't want to say everything needs to be perfect for us to have a positive play, but at least with Cam, I think he is more of the back that can make something out of nothing and not turn a play into a 2 or 3 yard loss, and instead make it, I get back to the line of scrimmage where I gain a yard or 2, where Tyrone Tracy, I think, is the back that leads more to the 2 yard losses, and now I'm in 2nd and 12, 2nd and 13, and I'm out of my skis already. Like, I'm already off schedule. I'm already doing a totally different design. I'm choosing different plays than I actually want to get into in these spots. Like, I'm not calling plays that I think are advantageous for me as an offense. And so that's the element that I think Cam brings, especially when James Hudson is on the offensive line committing penalties left and right. Can we talk about this? I will not allow us to end the Giants segment without discussing the weirdest drive that ended in points that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was like the Giants ended up driving. They ended up having like 110 or 115 yards of offense on a drive that ended in a field goal.
But they scored points with all those penalties.
Yeah. James Hudson got 4 consecutive penalties, got benched, and was screaming about it as if he couldn't figure out why he might have gotten benched.
But
come on now.
But it's the 4 penalties that you just picked up in 2 minutes of game time.
Yeah, and they sat his ass down for rookie Marcus Bow, who looked pretty good. I thought in his it's not really his debut. He's played a little bit here and there in week 1, but in his debut at left tackle for them with Andrew Thomas.
I mean, the bar was very low at that point when he got put into the game. But
yeah, it was just like don't have us call your name ever again. But yeah, I mean it's. Again, you think you don't think about it because of the 80 gajillion points that got scored between then and the end of this game, but that's a touchdown drive. This game doesn't go to overtime. You know what I mean? Like, and that should have been a touchdown drive. I mean, you got all the way down to inside the 2 before penalties ruined everything for you. So, just a brutal sequence of events. And again, just a drive where you had chunk plays and then penalties and chunk plays and penalties. And then all of it eventually ends in 3 points.
They're not a good enough team to have those types of things happen. They're just, they can't overcome that. That drive needed to be 7. And it's not because you get in your own way and you just don't overcome that as a team. Like the Eagles overcome that. The Bills overcome that. The Ravens overcome that because they're a good football team and you know you're going to get multiple chances throughout the game to score points. The Giants, I don't know how many drives you're going to get down in that end of the field. You got to turn them into 6, into 7. You can't just be settling for 3. You're not good enough as a team.
And especially since we didn't know how many points they would end up scoring in that game. That was coming off of a week where your offense looked like it couldn't score against a college team. And so the fact that you could have had an opening drive touchdown and just squandered that away was heartbreaking at the time. Obviously, they ended up, turning things around in that game. But again, a game that went to overtime, you left 4 points on the field for stupidity. And you just can't do that. And
as a team, the self-inflicted wounds are the worst. For the Giants, like if you don't execute right, and you miss some plays, that sucks. That's football, right? But when you're committing penalties as a team like the Giants, like Brian Dable just kind of has to throw his hands up and be like, guys, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing?
It's unacceptable. But
speaking of unacceptable,
I'll let you start on this, Chris, because I'm sure you have some thoughts. Because you probably had these thoughts from about the second quarter on. So I would like you to talk about your New York Football Jets.
Yeah, and I'm trying my best to not overreact in the complete other direction to what I said last week. Because again, I'm the Yahoo, and the clips are out on social media, who said that they could win this game. I was the guy who said that they could keep it close, and they got blown out. I mean, 30-10 is not even indicative of how badly they got beaten in this game. And so I'm trying to not completely spin in the other direction. And I've seen some friends who work in this space and cover this team that are leaning into the overreacting and yelling and screaming about how embarrassed that they are of being a Jets fan and how embarrassing of an effort that it was and how this is another year of a new regime promising accountability and promising a different culture and it being the same thing over and over again. And I hear you. And I understand that you feel that way. But I don't think you can put the past sins of Robert Saleh, of Todd Bowles, of Adam Gase onto Aaron Glenn. You need to give Aaron Glenn the proper runway to do what he wants to do with this team. And I think 2 weeks in, to say that this is just the same as any other coach that the Jets have brought in recently, and it's going to be the same where they're just going to continue to commit bad penalties. They're not going to have a good culture. They're just going to always screw up in these moments against divisional rivals like Buffalo. Like, I understand feeling that way in the moment because you're a Jets fan that has been there for all of these. Aaron Glenn just got here, and he deserves more than 2 weeks before you're going to, say he's going to be a failure or a success as a head coach. He was not going to be a success as a head coach because of the way they played in week 1, and he's not going to be a failure as a head coach because of the way that they've played in week 2. There's a lot of bad in this game, though, Jamie. And it's not...
By the way, before you continue on that, that's the same conversation happening where I'm sitting right now. So you know I'm in Chicago. And they have a new coach, new regime. having a lot of discussions about, oh, same old Bears, nothing's changed. This just another time you're telling this new era, all that other stuff. So patience is important. But go ahead, Chris. But yes, I will say that the Jets are, unfortunately for several fan bases, are not unique to that exact scenario happening to them this week.
No, and honestly, I'm somewhat surprised at the overreaction that I've been seeing to this, because yeah, I hated being embarrassed by the Bills yesterday, and it wasn't an enjoyable watch in any capacity. But to say that this is the same old Jets, to say that this is, embarrassing and this is just a continuation of what we saw, that's just completely unfair to Aaron Glenn, and you're not fostering a good enough environment for him to be able to succeed, is all that I'll say. Now, Glenn doesn't help himself for the way that he answers questions in the postgame. Like, every question being, I got to watch the tape. Like, dude, we know you're going to watch the tape. I'm going to watch the tape, okay? I'm going to sit down today at some point and watch the tape for the Wednesday pod and give a more in-depth answer to what happened on Sunday. We get it. We're all going to watch the tape. We're all going to see what happened. You got to give us a little more than that. And I'm not so much frustrated at the way the offense performed, because, Jamie, like, this kind of what we said was what would happen if they went down multiple scores. Like, they are a team that when they go down early, these are the results. It's going to get lopsided. They're not a team that can get back into it, and so teams are going to run up the score on them. So it's not even the final score that bothers me. It's 2 straight weeks of this defense not playing well. And I'm just tired of talking about the Jets having a good defense and having good talent, because they clearly don't. These are some of the same players, most of the same players that were here with Saleh, and they were struggling under Saleh. Like, it's a problem. Now, Glenn is instituting a new system, so I'm not surprised that it's taking a little bit. But I don't know, like, this is how the Jets are going to play sometimes. Like, I'm not somebody who, am I annoyed that they lost? Yes. Am I frustrated that the offense looked like they couldn't do anything? Yes. Am I upset that Justin Fields went from, having one of the best weeks of any quarterback in the NFL last week to having one of the worst weeks out of any NFL quarterback this week? Am I frustrated that it looks like he's immediately now not going to play because of a concussion in this upcoming game against Tampa Bay? Yeah, those are all reasons to be frustrated, but I knew what this season was going to be. Ups, downs, a lot in between. It's why I was so upset that they lost last week, because you knew games like this were on the menu, so you got to win the close ones. And so to me, this game just makes me more angry about the Steelers game. It doesn't actually make me angry about what happened against Buffalo. But Buffalo is going to go more than likely to the Super Bowl. Like, that's how good they are of a team.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you have to consider here as well is, and I think there's a lot of this around, and again, you want to be careful not getting too crazy after 2 weeks, but I saw what the Seahawks did on the road against Pittsburgh, and I have some questions about the Jets defense too. And obviously guys can have big game. I mean, but like, Seattle's defense on paper shouldn't be better than the Jets defense, and their secondary is certainly not better right now outside of it shouldn't be. I mean, you've got one corner in Seattle right now. So I echo your thoughts on, like, at some point the defense has to not just be a collection of names, and they actually have to be productive on the field consistently. The other part of this was the worst case scenario, but also within the realm of possibility. And we talked about this, that, we talked about Oliver being out and maybe they'd be able to run the ball effectively, and they weren't. But at the end of the day, they ran into a team that is multiple degrees better than them.
Yeah. And it's okay to just admit that and say, we're not at that level right now.
However, I do think I thought they would be more competitive. And I know you did too.
I picked them to win the game on Friday.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I didn't. And I think I picked them to lose by like 2 touchdowns or whatever. But I thought they would be competitive. And like you said, this game was, a 20-point game, but it wasn't. It wasn't that close. And again, very similar to the Giants in week 1, where the final score wasn't indicative of how out of this game the Jets, in that case the Giants, were the entire time. So I guess the question is now, like, concussion protocol, while it's not a guarantee, more often than not, the player misses the next game.
I don't have any insight on this. I do not think he's playing on Sunday. Aaron Glenn said something today, Monday, as we're recording this pod, that I thought was the answer. Like, he gave you the answer to the test. You just needed to be listening closely. He said something about how if we get to Friday and he hasn't practiced at all, like, it is Aaron Glenn's personal philosophy that if you don't get those reps, you're not playing. So, like, if he doesn't practice on Wednesday and if he's not practicing on Thursday, like, Justin Fields is not playing this week. Like, they'll just go to Tyrod for 1 week on the road in Tampa. They'll just skip him for a week.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen. Like I said, again, occasionally guys will come back that next week, but more often than not, they don't anyway, regardless of any practice philosophy. You still have to, there are NFL mandated protocols you have to pass through on certain days anyway. So you're going to have Tyrod next week. I don't think you're winning that game. I don't think you're winning that game with Fields, to be honest. I will see how Tampa Bay plays later tonight as we record this, but I guess, Chris, I'll leave this segment with this. Was there any positives for you? Whether it's an individual player, a concept, was there any positives, or is this one of those like classic burn the film games?
No, I don't want to burn the film, because I think all of the bad stuff needs to be shown to all of these gentlemen so that they never repeat it again. So no, I don't want to burn this tape, but no, I would not describe that there are any positives coming out of this game, because you saw all of the things that will lead to the worst case scenario outcome for the Jets every single week were all added together in a big bowl of stew and served to us on Sunday. Because the thing that I would say to you, Jamie, is that result could happen 4 or 5 more times this year. And I don't think it's indicative of like the Jets being a bad team versus being a good team. I just think with the way that they are constructed, with the limited available personnel on offense outside of Garrett Wilson and who Justin Fields is as a quarterback, these types of games I just think come with the territory of what they are trying to do. And that's kind of the worry that I have. I will say this. Aaron Glenn said something on Sunday in the middle of saying that he just was going to watch the tape. He said something that I hope he takes to heart, and because he brought it up, I think he's thinking about it in the back of his mind. But he said something about the Bills' run defense. And I'm not going to quote him specifically. I'll try to do it at least close enough here. But he said the Bills had a problem last week with their run defense, and they sorted it out. It's on us to sort out our problems from this week. And I love that accountability of, hey, the Bills are a great team. They had a problem last week, not a problem this week, because they fixed it. That's what we need to do as coaches. That's what we need to do as players. And I hope that he is speaking some truth there, and that there is going to be some soul searching inside the coaching staff, because there's some coaching issues here, I think, that are contributing to some problems specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And the one other, this isn't a positive, but it's just something that I was thinking about while you were talking. And maybe I'll have a better answer for this on Wednesday. I'm not sure if Justin missing this game and Tyrod starting in his place on Sunday is better for Tanner Engstrand in his first year as the OC, or worse for him in his development as his OC. I can make the case either way, and I kind of want to boil on it a little bit here. I want to think about it and maybe come back to that later in the week, because I in my head right now, sitting there thinking about it, I can make the case for both sides.
It is interesting, and I'll bring up this point, and here's why. Because I think, and you're going to see, you saw it a little bit last year, or I guess maybe 2 years ago, but definitely you'll see a lot going forward in Cincinnati. Zach Taylor simplifies and streamlines the offense a lot more when Jake Browning is playing versus Joe Burrow. And I think there's sometimes, there's good and bad to doing that. But I do think sometimes you can simplify your offense to a point where it, just the basics, which can actually help players going forward. And sometimes you try to put too much or everything on your starting quarterback, and then when that player is taken out of the game, you start to really refine exactly what you want to do and what your game plan is. So to that point, that's very possible. It's also going to be interesting because you think about the matchup next week with Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay historically over the last 5-6 years is one of the, if not the most difficult team in the league to run against. And I have some concerns about what this offense, we saw what this offense could do when they weren't running the ball at all in Buffalo. If you couldn't run on the Bills,
yeah,
running on that Tampa front is just something teams just don't do, and they haven't for a half decade. So concerning.
Now Tyrod does give you a little bit more in terms of down the field ability throwing the ball, but
yeah,
my worry is that's not what you want to be as an offense. So now needing to put that in,
that's the issue.
Does hurt
because that's
you
how you beat Tampa. Like, we're going to talk about it. I guess we might talk about it on Wednesday. They're playing tonight, but like, if Houston's going to win, it's not going to be maybe this will come back to bite me, but I don't think it's going to be because Nick Chubb gets 25 carries. I think it's going to be because they throw all over a very questionable secondary.
Yeah. So
Tyrod
is
cornerback position.
Tyrod is better for your game plan to specifically beat Tampa. I don't know if Tyrod playing this game this weekend is good for the overall development of your offense and for your young offensive coordinator who is trying to get his feet wet with what they're trying to do. And Tyrod is close to what they want to do with Fields, but it is different. They're two different quarterbacks. And so it's fascinating. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing the most.
At least it's a vet. Like if this was a young guy backing him up, that would be make it a lot more difficult.
If it was Cook playing this game this weekend, that would be a little alarming. Let's talk about some baseball. We can talk about your team first.
We should.
Took 2 out of 3?
Took 2 out of 3 from Boston. Dug themselves a hole they could not get out of on Sunday Night Baseball. Got down 6-0. They fought back to make this a game late, but they couldn't get out of it. But I think the biggest key to me here is one, taking 2 of 3 is very nice, good, and because Boston has belt to ass to the Yankees this year. So it was good to at least look not only competent, but win a couple games against Boston, especially in Boston. And by the way, this could very well be a playoff matchup in a couple weeks. So
do it again.
We could be seeing a lot more of this, which honestly, good for baseball. I'm sorry, whether people like me saying it or not. Yankees, Red Sox, both teams being playoff caliber teams and playing in key moments is good for baseball. Sorry, it is.
I think everybody. I think most people who are sick and tired of seeing the Red Sox and the Yankees in the regular season would make the distinction that in the playoffs it is a little bit of a different beast.
Yeah, and there isn't the level of hatred between these teams as it was when I was growing up for obvious reasons. Both, I mean, the Red Sox winning as they have in the last 20 years, really, it softened the blow for Red Sox fans. And then, it's been, I mean, if you really want to just go back to the turn of the century, I guess technically the turn of the century, like they're a lot closer in World Series than they've ever been in history. So, but I say that to say this, I am excited that they're playing better. I thought they played, obviously they got their what kicked in against Detroit for a little bit there, but they salvaged it in the series. They played well in against Toronto. Aaron Judge is hot again, and he won AL Player of the Week. He is playing he just ate up the Red Sox. I know at some point we'll do a season-ending recap or whatnot, but I think at this point, and I'm just going to say it, and I know I'm going to get accused of homerism, but
sure,
if you're voting for anybody other than Aaron Judge to be the American League MVP, you're just sick of voting for Judge.
Cal Raleigh, baby.
There was a time where I felt like Cal Raleigh had a legitimate argument, and I do think he is the clear number 2. But if you looked at the way these two have been playing over the last month or so, and you look just over the season in general, Aaron Judge is the clear choice to be AL MVP. And as good of a season as Raleigh is having, I still think he will be a really good runner-up, as just was last year when Bobby Wood Jr. had an absolutely unbelievable season and finished as the runner-up to Aaron Judge. I understand Cal Raleigh's a catcher, but those are factored in to a lot of things. And those are factored into things like F-WAR. By the way, if you're going to use catcher's WAR that involves a catcher, you really need to use Fangraphs WAR. You'll see the gap is larger between the two on Baseball Reference, but I'm going to be fair to you. I prefer Fangraphs WAR and its calculation in general, but when it involves catcher, you have to use Fangraphs. Judge still clears him there. Things like positional value are factored into that. He's better there. His OPS plus, almost everything is in Aaron Judge's favor in this category, and it is growing, that gap between the two in this last week or two. So, I don't know how the voting is going to go. I know the betting odds say Judge is a heavy favorite now. I think he's all the way up to like minus 550, minus 600 again. But I never know how writers are going to vote. And I know from watching this before, there was Mike Trout fatigue that cost him at least one MVP. And I do wonder if there's going to be some Aaron Judge fatigue or Yankees fatigue in general. But I don't know how you've watched these two players over the course of the entire season, and particularly since the All-Star break, and tell me that Aaron Judge is not the MVP.
I would vote for Cal Raleigh, but that's just me
but you're a hater.
Yeah, it's whatever. You can put me whatever bucket you want. I do think
because what's the only argument in my mind for Cal Raleigh is that he's a catcher. That's the center of the argument, because you can't say he's a better hitter. You can't say he's been a more valuable player. you can only just say, well, he's doing it as a catcher.
I
Right?
do think there is one thing that I wouldn't use as an argument. Let me just make it very clear. I would not use this as an argument. I do think it will be used as an argument because there are some very old baseball writers that care about these things. If the Mariners win the AL West and the Yankees are just a wild card team, I do think that is going to be held against Judge, and it will be points given to Cal Raleigh. Not saying it's fair.
No, I know. I get
it's right.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that. I would also say that the Yankees have a better record than the Mariners too.
I hear you. But most valuable player, they're going to be like, but he was on a team that won the division. The Yankees are playing on wild card weekend. Like, I can see the people, and you know the people I'm talking about, that would use that as an argument.
But yes, I do. But then those same people, I bet you, would vote for Shohei Ohtani for the NL MVP. Even now, they're probably going to win the division too. But if they didn't, they wouldn't vote for Kyle Schwarber just because the Phillies won the NL East.
Probably.
So, no, I agree. Some people will say that.
No, they have to do it. They haven't locked it up yet. They just got back into first place.
No, but even if assuming that they do it, like it's a ridiculous argument. But we have seen some really ridiculous things happen in both the MVP and Cy Young races before. So I can't rule it out. And there is a part of me that's a little worried that people are just going to be like, yeah, we're excited to vote for somebody that's not Judge. And that's not to say Cal Raleigh hasn't had an amazing season. He has. But like, there's also a part of me that goes like, you're going to vote for the guy that's hitting 230.
It's going to be a very interesting case study to see how either way, whether he wins it or loses it, how much value people put on what Cal Raleigh is doing. Like, you're just going to get like a bar for him. Like, this is what people think this season was worth.
Also, just an aside to this point, I watched a really interesting video, and I can't remember who did it, and I apologize.
Lovely. It's always great when you can't give credit.
It was a few weeks ago. But how pretty much, you know how like the torpedo bat phase had, it had that bright moment in April where everybody lost their what.
Yeah, because the Yankees were cheating using them. I remember.
And then nobody ever talks about it again.
I will say,
somebody ran the number.
Real quick, the Mets do, because Jeff McNeil still uses one. So it is one of those things that, like, on the bingo card, it comes up every once in a while.
It comes up,
But I overall agree with you that the rest of baseball has moved on, yes.
Has moved on completely. Somebody did a thing, and this was back in August. So obviously this doesn't include the last month or so of play. And they kind of looked back at everybody that was verified to be using the torpedo bats. And I looked at a lot of information, both on this year, last year, launch angles, hard hit rates, all this other stuff. And everything normalized, essentially, for everybody. Almost everybody that used the torpedo bat, their under-the-hood metrics all ended up going back into the normal ranges that they tended to be before. There were a couple players that actually did considerably worse with the torpedo bats. But there was one outlier. There was one player who greatly exceeded all of his previous under-the-hood metrics and obviously counting stats too.
I know who it is.
Cal Raleigh.
Oh, I was going to say it was Anthony Volpe.
No. No. If I say exceeded expectations, it was never Anthony Volpe.
I just had to troll.
It's Cal Raleigh. Interestingly enough. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the MVP, right? Because but I just found this is just an interest. That's why I said this is an aside. I don't care. I don't care if you use what bat you use. If it's a legal bat, it's a legal bat. This is not going into the MVP argument. This is just more of an interesting note of that he has actually been the player who has shown both statistically and under the hood significant major progress by using the new bats than anybody else. Everybody else is kind of normalized. And a lot of players went back to using their older bats that they used in previous years. He's been the one player that has had overwhelmingly extra success. And then it's tough to necessarily quantify why. There's a lot of assumptions you have to make in that scenario. But I did find that interesting. And obviously he's having a career year. He's having an amazing season. But I did find that to be very interesting that it seems to be benefiting him and his swing way more than it has anybody else, where everybody else kind of normalized. I did find that to be interesting. Again, that has nothing to do with the MVP race. It's just an aside about Cal Raleigh that I found out to be very interesting, that if true, and we'll see what he does next year and years beyond. But the idea that a change to the bat like that has the potential, even in a 1 out of 100 scenario, to completely change your offensive output is really interesting to me. It's just a fascinating note of baseball.
Just the way the game's going right now. Everyone's looking for whatever little edge they can, and some edges will be utilized across the whole game. Some edges will be utilized just for a couple of different teams, a couple of different players, and the game is constantly evolving. And I do think, just to wrap a bow on this before we continue on, that's why I'm so excited to see how the MVP race finishes up, because you'll start to see how the baseball world is valuing these certain seasons, and there will be a response, maybe not necessarily directly to the MVP voting, but to the results of these seasons in the way players do off-season work if they go to Driveline or something, and how they try to improve their craft year in and year out. You have one more note here on the rundown about the Yankees. Do you want to get to it? Do you want to save it for later in the week? Do we want to move to the Mets? I will.
We'll move to the Mets. I just want to mention this point. Schlittler is looking really good, and I think he is very close to being a lock to be their third starting pitcher to open the playoffs behind Fried and Rodon. So we'll talk more about that as we get deeper. But I feel at this point it's a clear and obvious answer who that third pitcher in the rotation would be for a short series.
I'm struggling with this one. Maybe you can help me out here, because I don't know what you want me to say here. I know that the conversation is supposed to be about the New York Mets right now, but I don't know what you want me to say that isn't just a regurgitation of the 400 things that I've said about this team previously. Okay. Because it's all the same.
We'll keep it brief. I mean, I believe, correct me if this is not the direct quote, but I believe Pete Alonso said something about taking a deep breath after the walk-off win. Do you think, and I guess time will tell, as it always does, do you think this is this losing streak ending is a pivot point? Not that they're just going to go on, they're never going to lose again. They're going to win the World Series and they're going to have a parade. I'm just saying, is this a pivot point to they can normalize it and just get into the dance? Or do you feel like nothing has changed? That's what I'm looking from you. Is there a little bit, and it's helped that some of the other, it's a game and a half now.
It's a game and a half on the Giants, 2 games on the Diamondbacks.
I mean, there was a period where they lost that lead. There was a period between podcasts where that was gone. Yeah. And thanks to themselves, and more importantly, thanks to others, they have at least given themselves a tiny cushion. We are running out of calendar.
12 games.
At some point, yeah, I mean, again, game and a half with 12 games, which means 13 for somebody else. It's not a lot. I mean, again, you can lose that in 2 days. But do you feel like this could be a turning point, or is this literally just, hey, you got one win, I'm not patting them on the back for finally winning a freaking game? Like, where do you sit on that spectrum?
I'm closer to the latter than I am the former. Okay. And one of the main reasons why is they start a 3-game series with San Diego tomorrow, and I don't want to talk bad about these 3 pitchers, but I feel like I have no other choice but to just speak honestly about how I feel. Brandon Sproat and Nolan McLean are not starting in this series. It is Holmes, Peterson, and Tong. And if I had to pick 3 starters that are the 3 that I have the least amount of trust in, it is those 3 starters. So yes, I'm happy that you won on Sunday, and for the moment that you still have that wild card spot, but Clay Holmes and David Peterson and Jonah Tong are starting in the next 3 days, and against a Padres team that's one of the better teams in all of baseball, there's a world where you lose 2 out of 3 and are no longer in a playoff spot when we get to Friday against Washington. And so to me, I said this on a Mets-specific show that I do, I am in the place right now where Tuesday's game is going to be very important to me. I want to see. And I don't necessarily believe in these things as like things you can put stock into and really grab hold of, and it tells you that the season is saved. But if Sunday was that sigh of relief that Pete talked about, everybody could take a deep breath and kind of reset, they need to come out on Tuesday and they need to just capitalize on the momentum that they built on Sunday. If they play another game that is just like a malaise is over them And it's another game where the starting pitching doesn't go deep. It's another day where the offense is back to doing what it did last week, and the at-bats and the quality of the at-bats are not very good, and they're just back to being the same team that they were in the previous 2 games of the Texas series, the 8 games of the losing streak before they won on Sunday, then yeah, nothing's changed for me. And so Tuesday's a really important one, but no, I'm not going to allow just one game to change how I feel about this team. I do think the frustrating part is, that, as we all do, that if everything is working for this team, they can win a World Series. They are that talented as a team. It's just they have not put it together enough this year to make me think that they'll be able to do it in the postseason. But at the end of the day, I just want to get into the playoffs. I want this team to, for the second straight year, be in the postseason. And I won't have expectations when they get there. I'll just be happy to enjoy the ride. And then if it ends early, just focus on what you need to do for 26. And if it is a magical ride, then great, I get to be a part of it. But I'll set expectations accordingly because of the way this team is played.
How happy are you that the Giants and D-backs have to play each other this week?
I mean, it's easily the best case scenario if you're a Mets fan, because one of them has to lose. And so you're not in a position where both of them are going to pass you in the next 3 days.
Yeah, so it's a 3-game series. They play each other. Reds. They both play tonight. Oh, I guess all 3, if you include the Reds, play tonight. Oh, the Reds lost 3 in a row. Put them in a little bit more of a bind. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going to hold on. Because I don't have, not that I have a lot of confidence in them. I just don't have a lot of confidence in the D-backs, Giants, and Reds behind them. You know, Giants have lost 2 in a row. Reds have lost 3 in a row, which has really, really helped the Mets right now.
Yeah, shout out to the Sacramento A's.
Yeah, have really helped them out. But I will say this, we'll leave it on this, Chris, because I feel like this is the most relevant piece of information right now. Do you want one of these teams to sweep, or do you want it to be a 2-1 split? And it doesn't really matter to you which way.
I think,
or what I guess would the ideal scenario be a Diamondbacks win 2 of 3.
I think if I was being honest, I would prefer the team that is further back to win the series, okay. Just because they have a farther distance to get to take over from the Mets for that 3rd spot. But I'm just so laser focused in on what the Mets are doing that it's hard to really say what I'm rooting for.
The Mets control their quote unquote their destiny.
If you just keep winning baseball games, like it doesn't matter what anybody else does. Like if you win tonight, you don't need to scoreboard watch. You can if you want, but you don't have to because you won. Magic number's down to 10. Like their magic number to clinch a playoff spot is 11 when they start play Tuesday night. They can make it 10 with 1 victory.
Yeah. So the Giants finish out the year 3 games in Arizona, 4 games against the Dodgers, and then 3 games at home. And then they have a 6-game homestand in the year, Cardinals and Rockies. So you might not get a lot of help that final week of the season. So you better have a lead. Diamondbacks have a real rough stretch. This is why you actually might want you probably want the Diamondbacks to win the series. You've got 3 at home against the Giants, 3 at home against the Phillies, 3 at home against the Dodgers, and 3 on the road against the Padres. That's a real tough stretch for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
I was just going to say that the Mets' magic number right now is 11 for that final playoff spot. They have the tiebreaker with both the Giants and the Diamondbacks. So those teams have to pass them. So it is some combination of 11 Mets wins or Giants losses. So I would say rooting for the Diamondbacks and then the Mets to win against San Diego.
And then for the Reds, 3 at the Cardinals, 4 home against the Cubs, 3 home against the Pirates, and they end with 3 at Milwaukee. So, I mean, that's kind of the stretch right now. I think to me, just looking at that, I still don't believe in the Reds. I still don't think they're consistent enough. And they're obviously the furthest back of those 3. Diamondbacks have an absolutely brutal schedule to finish the year, and it's going to be really tough for them, like I said, to catch and then pass the Mets. I'm trying to look at what's the Mets. They got the Padres at home. Then you got the Nats at home, and that's the one. You have to sweep that series. You have to, right? Like you have to sweep the Nats at home.
Sure, but they haven't done.
Because then you end the year. You end your final week of the season, 6 road games, 3 at Wrigley, and then you're better than Miami, but they always seem to mess with you.
Do I need to do that? I don't need to do that.
I know.
I don't need to do that.
But that's what I'm saying. Like you got to sweep the Nats here. Like, that's your gimme series. That's the gimme series of this. And you get them at home.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
and
that's the one.
And you draw San Diego at home, too. Like, you should be able to win the series against San Diego at home.
But what I'm saying is, I think if you go 4-2
in this next 6 games,
I think you're in good shape. I think you can go 5-1. I think 5-1's doable in theory, but go 4-2. I feel like you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, 4-2 gets the magic number down to 7 without any of the other results that you potentially could
and
have.
Again, remember that the Giants and D-backs play each other.
Right.
So
you're going to get help there.
You know what I mean? Like, you could be in a spot where you're like, you go in that stretch 4-2, you might gain 2 games. You know what I mean? You might be 3 games up at that point heading into the final week of the season, which again doesn't guarantee you anything, but like, I think you're feeling a lot good. That's at least a decent enough space to have some margin of error in that final week of the season. And I think, again, if you sweep the Nats, and you only have to take 1 from San Diego. I know that's the wrong order. You can't go into the future and then go to the past, but I don't know. I think the Mets are going to hang on. I really do. It's gonna be barely, but they're going to hang on, and they'll play either San Diego or LA in the wild card round.
Let's finish up with the final word here today on the NY Sports Index. Do you want me to go first, or would you like to go first today? I'm ready to go. Even though mine's not on the dock, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is.
Go for it. I have no idea. I put mine in the sheet, but you didn't. So go ahead.
I did. Aaron Glenn has talked a lot about accountability for the New York Jets, and we've seen some of that accountability already with the decision to cut Xavier Gibson after what happened with the fumble that led to the Steelers scoring a touchdown that ultimately was the decider in that game. There's another bit of accountability that Aaron Glenn needs to show to this fan base. And we talked about the range of when accountability hits certain players on a team, that if you are a better player, a more talented player, you are given more of the benefit of the doubt, and accountability is dealt with you differently. The New York Jets cannot continue to look their fan base in the eyes and play Michael Clemens in important situations. This has been going on for years now. And I don't care if Josh Allen Hollywooded it. I don't care if Josh Allen did his best Shawn Michaels against Hulk Hogan in SummerSlam and was overselling it. I do not care what he was doing. You cannot put yourself in a position where they're already looking for plays like that, and you have the reputation of being Michael Clemens. Your reputation is you do stupid plays all the time. You jump into the tops of piles when you're not supposed to. You make these plays routine for you. And I'm sorry, but if the Jets continue to put Michael Clemens on the field in important situations, these things are going to continue to find them. And that's where I will agree with the people who are losing their minds about this being the same old Jets, that are losing their minds of being embarrassed watching this team play, because that's fixable. You can fix that. You can say you've had chance after chance after chance. You're clearly not getting it. The discipline, you know how we talk about discipline and we say penalties sometimes fall on the coaches, sometimes they fall on the players. This is a very clear example of the discipline problems for Michael Clemens on the field with penalties is not a coaching problem, because I know the coaches are talking to Michael Clemens about it, because Michael Clemens is a habitual person that commits these penalties all the time. You know they're taking him aside. They're not surprised by it. They're taking him aside and talking to him about it. And he continues to make these mistakes. That falls on him. And if the Jets want to preach accountability and they want to preach a changing of culture, Aaron Glenn cannot continue to put number 72 on the field in important situations. Or then if that's the case, then I don't want to hear about it after the game when somebody asks you a question about penalties from Michael Clemens in a big spot. Don't want to hear it.
I'm actually going to use a timeout here, Chris.
Final word timeout.
Yeah, because I did have a final word, and I still want to get to it, but it reminded me of a Jets topic we should be talking about that we did not talk about yet. What is your thoughts about the report that came out about the Jets being deep in the Micah Parsons trade conversation, with the reported Quinnen Williams and 2 firsts, but according to this report, it was the contractual money that held this up. They did not want to ultimately give Parsons the deal he got in Green Bay. But let's take away that for a little bit of a second. What would your thoughts be if they were to make that deal? Is that a deal the Jets should be even considering at this point in their organizational arc, as a team that's building back to hopefully be a contender at some point, So as that report came out over the weekend, Chris, I actually want to get your thoughts on that before I have my final word.
Yeah, so I think to your point, the life cycle of where the Jets are at as a team doesn't match up with what Micah Parsons brings to you value-wise as a player. I don't have a problem with the Jets balking at the money. I don't have the Jets balking if they didn't feel comfortable with where they're at with the life cycle, and I don't have a problem with them backing off if they didn't like the reported ask from Dallas. I wouldn't have traded Quinn Williams and 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons personally. I wouldn't have done it if I was sitting in that chair. And it's not just because I love Q and I think he's the heartbeat of that defense. It's just it's not where they're at as a team. And I don't want to say that Micah Parsons wouldn't make the Jets pass rush better, but it's not like that's the problem with the Jets defense. Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson are good players. They're good pass rushers. The Jets don't need help there. They need help with the interior. And so if they trade for Micah Parsons, great, you're going to be able to get after the quarterback more. But you spent multiple day 3 picks to trade for Harrison Phillips and to make moves to bulk up the interior of your defense. And you're moving a really good player in this spot for a really good player in another spot because Jamie, is it outlandish? Maybe I'm being a homer. So please stop me if I'm wrong here. But Quinn Williams is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game. Top 3 at the position?
Yeah.
So you're trading a top 3 player for a top 3 player, and you're just you're shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic. You're not actually fixing any of your problems. You're just moving where the problem is. You're moving the P under a different shell.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Micah Parsons is a megastar, and I get that. But the problem, I think there are 2 issues here. One, when you're now moving Quinn Williams as well, it changes the equation of what you need to give back. Because we know what the deal turned out to be. And I like Kenny Clark a lot, but he is leaps and bounds below where Quinn Williams is in terms of value. So to give up that in 2 firsts is a lot. If they were the Eagles, different story. And, if that was like, I'm not saying that it would have been interesting if it was, Jalen Carter and 2 1s becomes a different equation. But that's a team that's a Super Bowl contender. The Packers are a Super Bowl contender. The Jets aren't there yet. And they wouldn't be there with Micah Parsons, where I think Micah Parsons has elevated Green Bay from a good team to a great team. It would have elevated the Jets from a bad team to a sort of still bad team. And it would have taken away first-round assets that this team needs to have to build. You know what I mean? This team is nowhere close to being ready to compete yet. So, right. Yes, so I agree with that. But I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that. My final word is going to be, we are starting to see around the league, these 0-2 teams, the hot seat's going to get really hot for some teams. Probably the hottest is right now down in Miami. With Mike McDaniel, and you're starting to see in the press conferences little hints here and there of what I would like to call the blame game. It isn't overt yet. It isn't right out there. But the scramble for people to save their jobs is already starting. And in New York, I think we're going to be able to identify the guy that's going to be the fall guy first. And I think it's defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. And there's a lot of Giants fans that are very upset with him right now. But the defense has not looked good. Outside of the pass rush, it's not looked good at all. There's, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the schematic decisions to end the 4th quarter were questionable at best. And we're already seeing fans calling for him to be fired. We know that Daboll and Shane are in a very precarious spot coming into this year. And it's not helped by being 0-2 and having a really tough schedule. We talked earlier in the show about how everything on earth makes you think this is a get-right game for Kansas City. Everybody thinks that. I think that. They think that. Giants fans think that. Everybody thinks that. If the Chiefs, who have had their own offensive struggles, particularly down the field, I know Mahomes finally got one to Tyquan Thornton, but he also missed a bad one to Tyquan Thornton as well. If the Chiefs have this get-right game, and their offense is clicking on all cylinders, and the Giants get destroyed in primetime, I think they might have a new defensive coordinator before they have Jackson Dart as their starting quarterback. So something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly can see across the league a couple of different situations that the noise is getting very loud. You mentioned Miami, but there that's what happens when you don't have a win to start the season. People start pointing fingers, and it becomes a who can throw other people under the bus the quickest.
Yep.
It is a race to the bottom.
It's happening in Miami already.
Yes.
And I think Dable hasn't done it yet, but I think the fans are doing it already. I do think Bowen will be the scapegoat.
It would be happening if not for them actually potentially being good. Because if they were 0-2, it would be a scramble to throw people under the bus.
Yeah, it would. And somehow Indianapolis is the best offense in football. Go figure.
Does that bother you that Daniel Jones is succeeding
real
quick before we get out of here?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. I don't think most Giants fans wish harm upon Daniel Jones now that he's not on the team.
I would agree.
I think while he was still there, he represented the "we picked you over Saquon" department. And I think the blame has rightly, in this case, because usually it falls on the player. I think the blame has fallen in the right areas for that decision. And the way the Giant, part of it's maybe because we saw the Hard Knock scene, the infamous Hard Knock scenes. But I think the fan base has really kind of understood that Daniel Jones isn't to blame for the Giants making that choice. The Giants front office is to blame for making that choice. So I don't get the sense, I'm sure there's some people, but I don't get the sense there's overwhelming animosity for Daniel Jones having success. I think it is really interesting. And I think it says more, quite frankly, about Anthony Richardson than it does again about anybody else.
Fair enough.
In this equation. But that's for, the Indianapolis Sports Index podcast to handle.
That's a double reference. So we're branching out to Minneapolis and now Indianapolis. Just Annapolis.
Yeah. We're just going to, then we'll go to Annapolis.
I don't know how much content we'll have there. I'm not sure if we would be able to do one there.
But, yeah, probably not a lot. But no, it doesn't bother me. I'm actually happy that he's having success. I am pleasant. There's still part of me that thinks it's a little bit of fool's gold, but
2-0 is 2-0, Jamie. 2-0 is 2-0.
It is. I have, but you know what's not fool's gold? The way they're having success. You know what I mean? Like maybe they get cold, but nothing that they're doing is unsustainable, right? It's not like anything Indianapolis is doing that's like, oh, well, there's no way they're going to.
They're giving the ball to their all-pro running back in the backfield, and they're throwing it to their good wide receivers. I mean, it's just...
And their star rookie tight end, who we knew was going to be probably making an impact, who, by the way, through 2 weeks is almost identical numbers to the first 2 weeks of Brock Bowers' historic rookie season. So,
if only there was somebody on this podcast that had both Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren on their fantasy team. And it's not Jamie.
If only if there was somebody... Now... Oh, no, you know what, Chris? I do have a good piece of information. We should give credit because I almost was going to say something.
We are never going to end this
I would have to correct myself. Armand Membu's been good.
Okay. I'm glad.
I'm only saying that because I almost said the Jets could have had Tyler Warren, but I wouldn't want Tyler Warren at the expense of
Armand Membu. So, no, I'm okay with that.
I will give him a shout out. Mason Taylor got in the. Did Mason Taylor get in the end zone? No, he was the one touchdown score, right?
Jeremy Ruckert.
No, it was Ruckert, right?
Jeremy Ruckert scored the touchdown. Yes.
It is funny because you've been waiting for Ruckert for forever.
And now I want Mason Taylor.
It hasn't been that long, but it feels like it's been that long.
And now I'm Mason Taylor pilled. So I flipped to the other side.
Okay. Well, that's enough about this. But yes, I'm happy Daniel Jones is having success. And I think it's going to be interesting because if he is able to continue this run, I do think we've forgotten how highly thought of Shane Steichen was at one point. And the run of Minshew and these other guys that have Anthony Richardson and some other players that have kind of run through there. Sam Ellinger. I don't know. Did Jason Bean start a game? I don't know if Jason or somebody he's the backup. I don't know if he started a game or not, but that kind of everybody was ready. I mean, he was talking about hot seat, him and Ballard. But,
that's what I'm saying. If they started 0-2, the throwing under the bus would be occurring there, but they're not. They're 2-0. Winning cures all. Winning cures all. That is going to do it for us here on another edition of the NY Sports Index. By the way, quick shout out to me. I did a whole episode, didn't get an email notification that went off. Look at me. I'm coachable.
Oh, that's right. You didn't have one.
I am coachable.
I'm amazed. Well, at some point we'll do something about that window behind you, but in the meantime, we'll live with that.
It's funny that it's a shade that's supposed to block out the light.
It's bright as could be. It's as bright as the sun. And the funny thing is, when you put this together for YouTube, it almost looks like it's like me. It almost looks like it's my fault.
Yes,
but it's not.
It's not. It's not.
It's
Not
yours.
It's my fault.
It's
Yeah,
your
my
fault.
If you want to watch the show, 2 ways to do that. The NY Sports Index YouTube channel. You also can watch the show in the Spotify podcast feed. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show wherever you are listening to us. Do us a favor as well. Share the show with a friend, loved one, significant other, somebody who would enjoy the NY Sports Index as we continue to grow this thing out. We would greatly appreciate it. We're back on Wednesday. Probably some breakdown of more things, Jets and Giants, since we have more days to unpack what we just saw last week. And then as the week progresses, we'll begin to get you ready for the next week of football action. Until then, have a good one.